Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea from Game Informer, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. After a long stint on the road, I am back, and we have a fun one for you today. While I was out in Los Angeles, I was able to sit down with not only the directors of the Super Mario Bros. Movie, but some of the cast as well. So I will be putting those interviews in this episode in full. The cast interviews, as they typically are super short, but I got a full half hour with the two directors. So we're going to start with the quick interviews with the actors, then move on to the directors, and then we will wrap up this episode with an extended review of the Super Mario Bros. Movie, as well as a discussion about what it was like to attend the premiere of the movie and interview Shigeru Miyamoto and Koji Kondo, which I also did while I was out in Los Angeles. Joining me for that later in the show will be friend of the show, Krysta Yang. But before that, let's throw to the first interview, which features Chris Pratt and Charlie Day. I am joined by Chris Pratt and Charlie Day, who play Mario and Luigi in the new Super Mario Bros. Movie. I guess first, right off the bat, let's get a quick one out of the way. Do you guys have a favorite Nintendo game of all time?
Ooh, God, that's good.
Wow. I mean, if you put in a little up, down, left, right, BA, select, start, and you start playing Contra, you are going to have a good time.
Golly. I mean, Spy Hunter was good.
Yeah.
Mock Rider was good. I think my favorite was probably The Legend of Zelda, the original Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, same, man. I loved Zelda.
I spent a lot of time on Zelda.
And then Super Mario Brothers, of
Well,
course.
Super Mario Brothers, yeah. I
course,
mean,
Super
that's
Mario
the
Brothers.
given. You got to say that.
If I go to a
Of
place
course.
and they have an old school Super, like a Nintendo, and they have Super Mario Brothers,
Yeah, I'm playing.
I'm playing.
And I'll get to like level like 5-2 before I even get died.
Same. I'm a little rusty.
So both of you stepping into these roles that, they're just such iconic characters. I would say that Mario and Luigi are probably about as recognizable as Mickey Mouse these days. So how do you kind of step into that role without having like the weight of expectation and the weight of like just all of the history of these characters? How do you go about like approaching these characters?
Well, first of all, a little trust in the filmmaking team that you're with. That Illumination makes such great movies. Trust in Nintendo that their involvement in this is that they're going to create a product that they're going to be happy with and feels respectful of the franchise they've developed.
Right.
And then some blissful ignorance in terms of like just
tons of that.
The massive fan base, and then you're done recording and you realize, oh my gosh, this thing's going to be giant. And that little mixture of three things I think worked out nicely.
Yeah, and it's nice to be part of the collaborative team that is responsible for being mindful and careful about these characters that people do care so much about.
Yeah.
You want to get it right. You're glad for me, I wouldn't want them to screw it up, and the best way for me to make sure they don't screw it up is to jump in and be part of it.
And then just commitment, right? Like I think both of us, anytime we take a job, it matters as much to me that I feel good about what I do, that someone else out there feels good about what they do. So if I am holding my performance up to my own standard, then hopefully it's up to someone else's as well.
Absolutely. And, both of these characters have had kind of a singular voice over the past basically 3 decades. So how do you go about kind of creating a voice for these characters that makes it your own?
Well, it all just comes down to story. This is really a story. This is a storytelling medium. Video games, they tell a story in a way, and you're allowed to be these characters, and they are the avatars to allow you to go on these quests, and that's what it's been for 30 years. But here, we're really crafting a story. And so the script and the story is going to tell us a lot of who these characters need to be. What makes Mario Mario? What makes Luigi Luigi? How are they separate? How are they... what's their relationship like? What is their relationship with their parents? What's their relationship with their family?
Right.
What are the circumstances of their life that are calling them on this quest? And once you know all those things, it kind of makes it easy.
Yeah, you approach it from emotion, which is slightly different from, hey, what's the funniest way to, say it to me? Instead, you're saying, wait, why am I saying this to my brother? What do I care about? What am I feeling in this moment? And then you start from that place, and then you build out.
And it sounds crazy, but it's like you take away all the fantasy, the jokes, the animation, the music. What you need to have is a good drama. You need to have a good emotional through line and an
starts
arc for
with
the
that.
characters. And then you add all the other stuff on it, the sentiment, the nostalgia, all the music, the great characters, the Easter eggs.
And then you pop in a catchphrase and you got yourself a
And you
hit.
got yourself a hit movie.
Chris, Charlie, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck launching this movie.
Hey, thanks
Thank
a lot.
you,
We'll see you
thank
later.
I am now joined by Seth Rogen, who plays Donkey Kong in the brand new Super Mario Brothers movie. Seth, we want to talk about your role here a little bit, but first, do you have a favorite Nintendo game of all time?
It's probably Mario. The Mario 64 game was probably the one that and Mario Kart, Super Mario Kart, probably Super Mario Kart. Yeah.
So you must have loved having such an emphasis on Mario Kart in this movie.
I really was psyched about that. Yes.
So what initially attracted you to this role?
Honestly, it was like the cast overall was exciting. The idea that they were actually like putting a lot of talent and resources towards making a big, cool Super Mario Brothers movie was exciting to me. I grew up with Mario Brothers. I was hugely into video games when I was young. And I keep saying, seeing that as an 11-year-old, seeing that first Mario Brothers movie was truly a disappointing experience to me. And so anything I can do to provide modern children with a good Mario Brothers movie, I will do.
I remember seeing that movie in theaters, and it was actually the first movie I remember leaving and being like, I don't think I liked that.
Yeah,
so I'm right there
I
with
feel
you.
the same. I think it was the movie that showed me movies could be bad, and which didn't even occur to me before that.
Exactly. So DK has such a larger than life presence in this film, but were there particular parts of his personality that you really wanted to play to when you came into this role?
Honestly, mostly that he's kind of is like a villain to Mario, like in the games. Like they have a very adversarial relationship. And so to me, that was a funny place to start. And this idea that he hates Mario and doesn't want to be with Mario. And he kind of feels like he's been kind of stuck with Mario throughout the course of the movie, to me was, a potentially funny dynamic. It's a big swing to decide that your joke is you hate the star of the movie, but I thought maybe I hoped I could make it work.
Unlike Mario and Luigi, who've had this kind of defined singular voice over the course of, about 3 decades now, Donkey Kong's voice has kind of changed, and it's kind of been just this not defined thing over the course of his existence. So how did you go about finding the voice that you wanted to use for Donkey Kong?
I only do one voice, and it's my voice, so it was not a hard process. It was
be yourself. It's always good advice, right? So did you ever get to hear the entire DK rap?
Oh yeah, of course.
So,
I'm the one who pushed to have the DK rap in the movie.
Really?
Oh yeah, big time.
So in addition to being a Mario 64 fan, I'm guessing you were a Donkey Kong 64 fan, or did you just know about the DK rap because of just being around it?
As a rap fan and video game fan, I of course knew about the DK rap, but yeah, I knew all about that. Yeah.
So outside of...
It's not a good rap song, I'll be honest. It's lyrically not fantastic, but...
It's not, no, but you can't help but watch it. It's like a car crash, right?
It was a different era in hip-hop, yeah.
So did you have a favorite moment in the script outside of the DK rap?
The whole Rainbow Road sequence I thought was very cool. That's something as a kid was always one of my favorite parts of any of the games, and... yeah, and the introduction, Donkey Kong, that whole introduction fight is very cool, I think. And it's like a great manifestation of, I think, what fans hope this movie will have, Of
course. And, stepping into the role of such an iconic character and something like, you being a Nintendo fan growing up, what is that like? Just kind of being like, I'm stepping into this character that's like one of the godfathers of video games.
It's cool. There's a novelty to it that's very fun. And I think it is one of those things that young, 12-year-old me would think it was pretty cool, Yeah. Of all the things 12-year-old me would be really disappointed by, this is not one of them.
you told me about your favorite Nintendo game of all time. What was kind of your first experience with Nintendo, and like kind of what made you fall in love with like the games that this company produces?
Yeah, I mean, I had like a Commodore, which had, before the Nintendo Entertainment System, they made Donkey Kong and things like that were on a Commodore. And yeah, I mean, it's funny because even looking back, like they were the first games that really had like characters that stood out, there was lots of driving games where you'd move a car along the road, or little spaceship games where you'd fly a spaceship around and shoot people. But Donkey Kong was the only one that had like Mario and Luigi and Donkey Kong and the princess. Like it felt a little bit more cinematic and kind of a bit more. It clearly like worked because like people really grasped onto it even in that very early form.
Absolutely. And, I'm assuming you have seen the finished product by now. Is this the movie that you think 11-year-old you would have left the theater thinking that was the movie I wanted?
Oh, he would have been so much happier. He wouldn't. He would have. It would have really changed the whole. It's like a sliding doors scenario. It would have changed my whole life. Maybe would have been different. I would have been a happier, less productive person. Maybe were that movie good. My whole career's maybe trying to make up for that.
Did you get to interact at all with like the likes of like Shigeru Miyamoto in terms of like any kind of like feedback or anything?
No, zero.
Okay, I didn't know how involved he was with the process.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that like, as somebody who grew up playing Nintendo games, that was kind of cool to hear he was so involved.
It was, yeah. I did a little intro video and he like introduced me and it was crazy. And like, honestly, it's like getting to work with like a filmmaker that you've looked up to your whole life. Like it's someone who's like created iconic things that have really been a part of the culture that created who I am, so it's it's cool.
And I guess where would you like to see the character's involvement with the franchise going forward if this does in fact become a franchise?
Well, I think, since, Donkey Kong is where Mario spawned off of. So now that Mario has gained prominence, it only seems right to return to Donkey Kong. What I'm saying is Mario should be a sidekick in the Donkey Kong movie, not the other way around.
So we're building up the Nintendo cinematic universe.
Exactly.
And I mean, I guess what is your primary sales pitch to people who kind of still have that, frankly, at this point, outdated notion that like video game movies suck? Like as somebody who now in 2023 is in a main character in one of the biggest video game movies ever released, what is your pitch to those people?
I'd say show your children The Last of Us and then ask me if they think video game movies suck.
All right, Seth, thank you so much for your time and best of luck with the movie.
Thank you.
I am now joined by Aaron Horvath and Michael Jelenic, the directors of the brand new Super Mario Brothers movie. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
We're doing great.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
How are you feeling in the lead up to the release of this movie?
Oh man, I'm super excited and anxious, and we this movie's so important to us, and we worked really, really hard on it. Teams of hundreds of people worked on it, and we all really love it. And this sense of anticipation before releasing it to the audience is killing me. I can't wait for everybody to see it.
Absolutely. So I guess both of you, would you mind diving just a little bit into kind of your history with Nintendo? Like how much of a past do you have with Nintendo and its games?
Oh man, I've been playing Nintendo games like my entire life. Like Super Mario Brothers absolutely captured my imagination when I was a kid. Like I had never seen anything like it before. I'd played video games before that. I'm like an 80s kid, so it's like Asteroids and like Breakout and like old school games like that. So when I first played Super Mario Brothers, it was like a revelation. It was like the graphics were incredible, the movement was incredible. There was always something like interesting to find. Like there was this sense of adventure and discovery. And I feel like Nintendo has like continued to do that. That's one of the things I like about them so much is they continue to do that like throughout the years. Like with every new Mario installment, there's always like there's still that sense of like fresh discovery and excitement and adventure in every Mario game. So yeah, I love Nintendo, and I think this movie proves it. If anybody has any doubts.
And it's like you never even stepped away from Nintendo. It's like, that's the great thing. It's just like we started playing in when we're 8 or 9, and there's been Aaron literally never put down the controller for me. I had a little bit more gaps. It's like, I played the original for like probably 3 years straight until I could beat that game without warping, as I like to tell people. And then I came back to it like when Mario Kart became popular. And then I, with my kids, it's like, Mario Party. And, so there's all these, it wasn't just like one moment in our lives. It's like Mario has been a constant present for both of us.
Awesome. And so how did this opportunity come across your desks?
It was post the release of our last movie. Michael and I were just kind of taking meetings, around as you do, and we met the guys from Illumination. Michael and I were also a writing team. That's what we were doing previous to this. So we actually met with the producers at Illumination, and we thought they were looking for writers. So we just like had this whole lunch with these guys where we were telling them how like we're really good writers and we just love writing all the time, and we just write all day and all night, man. And then at the end of the lunch, they made it really clear that they were looking for directors for the Mario movie, and we were like, "Oh, that's cool. That's really cool." And then on the drive back, we were like, "Hey, I think we blew that." But I guess they liked us because they came back and we got into it. So it was really like. It was really amazing because like, I mean, there's no project that I would have loved to work on more than this. And the feeling that like I blew it was like pretty soul crushing. So, I think that the fact that they came back around and everything worked out is it's pretty incredible. And I'm honored to be a part of it.
Yeah, and you referenced your prior movie. Did you take any lessons from making a movie like Teen Titans Go to the Movies into making a movie like the Super Mario Brothers movie?
That's an interesting question. I mean, our
opposite experiences. I would,
they're radically
like we love Teen Titans Go. We love that crew. I mean, what was asked of that crew was just like make a movie and a TV series at the same time. And I think everybody at that studio was pretty impressed that we were able to pull that off. And it was just limited resources and overworked but the end product we're both really proud of. And then this experience, I think, was opposite of that, where it's like you have all the resources all the time that you could possibly have. So and it was a completely different way of making a movie too, just as far as doing something sort of more simplified animation process versus like this is full CG with all that everything that comes with that. So it was a little bit of, certainly for me, a learning process on this movie as far as like all the things that you have to take into account. So, but yeah, I don't know. Did we learn anything from that experience, Aaron?
I think so. I mean, I think like we had already sort of learned it on the series, but having a crew that you love and that you trust, that'll be there to have your back, when you're dying, when you're crawling through the desert, desperate for water. They got a little hydro flask for you. Because we came into Illumination, not knowing anyone. We were at Warner Brothers for almost 8 or 9 years. So it was a big jump for us to come to this new studio, and not to mention the fact that the production studio is actually in Paris. So it's like, oh man, we're gonna have to hang out with like French people. What are they like? And like everybody was incredible. Like they're like the best artists in the world, and they're super welcoming and super collaborative. And so having that crew that you can rely on and that you trust and that everybody's like working toward the same vision is super important.
For sure. And, I had kind of a bonding moment with Seth Rogen when I was talking to him yesterday. Yeah. And we both had this shared experience where we went in 1993 to go see the Super Mario Brothers movie in theaters, and we both emerged from that being like, oh, I don't think I liked that. Like, we were both super excited for it, and we both emerged, and that was kind of the first movie that told us that movies could really like not be great.
Oh, no.
So like, here we are 30 years later, a brand new Super Mario Brothers movie is coming out, and I mean, full disclosure, I'll tell you that I've seen it, and it's the movie that I wish would have come out when I was a kid, because it's an awesome movie. And I was kind of just wondering like what your initial goals were coming into this movie, and like, I guess what you were hoping to accomplish with making a movie that veers a little bit more faithfully to the source material instead of what we got in 1993.
I mean, I would say that experience that you had was probably the guiding experience for this movie.
That was my very simple goal, is exactly what you said. Like, I wanted to make the movie that I wanted to see when I was a kid. You know, like if there were fans like us who were making movies back then, like, this is the movie that they would have made. You know. Sorry, Michael, go ahead.
No, but it's I mean, it really is like Aaron's, like, we would talk about this, Aaron's like disappointment of coming out of that theater and not seeing what he was hoping to see, because, you know, Aaron and I come from that Teen Titans Go background, and it's very sort of irreverent to the source material, right? And you know, one of the reasons we say we could have done that is because there was a reverent version of the source material. People already had that out there, and there wasn't that version for this movie. So you know, I think like, whenever, you know, Aaron's not that emotional of a guy, but I think like it was very meaningful, that experience that he had of coming out. It's like, like, it was almost like heroic on his part. He's like, kids today will not have that experience. They will have
I'm gonna make a change in the world.
Yes. And so that was really the sort of guiding principle for a lot of the choices. It's like, this is people are going to see something they love the way they're expecting to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And it absolutely is very respectful to the source material, and it's just so dense and so jam-packed with references, both visual, audio, everything. Like, there's just around every single scene, there's just all this music that you recognize throughout the entire series. I mean, it stretches all the way back to Donkey Kong, all the way up to Bowser's Fury, which it was very surprising to me that you had something that recent in the movie. Like, what was the process like of like figuring out what Easter eggs you wanted to add into this film?
You know, it's funny. In many ways, like, I don't consider them Easter eggs. There's definitely like tons of stuff to find and notice and appreciate in the movie, but for me, it's more adaptation than Easter eggs. Like, for me to make this movie in the way that I wanted, it was like Nintendo and Super Mario had to be the sort of like well that everything was drawn from, you know. So like, you know, the opening of the movie, there's lots of references to Nintendo stuff. And I'd say like that's the most dense Easter egg area. But once Mario gets off on his adventure into the Mushroom Kingdom, to me, that's more like adapting the game world and the visuals that I love from the game world to a cinematic experience, you know? So anytime we were crafting a set or scoring something, you know, Brian and Koji Kondo worked really well together, crafting a score that was both like original and had the game themes in it. Because I just wanted like this thing to have Mario absolutely in its DNA, like it down to its very bones. Like the core of it is just a very reverential Super Mario experience, you know. So every choice we made was based on that.
Yeah, and also, you know, Mario is such a beloved character, and everybody has sort of their own sort of Mario experiences. We have a crew filled with super fans, and it wasn't necessarily like, oh, we're going to assemble a crew of super fans. It's just, this is the world that we live in today. Everybody was like, especially in our line of work, a lot of these people are impacted by you know, video games and you know, in particular Super Mario Brothers, that you know, like Aaron said, from the composer. The composer was one of the reasons we went with Brian is like, he was such a hardcore fan, but that's true for you know, the animators, the designers, the storyboard artists. Everybody, even like my favorite Easter egg, I won't give it away, is something that we did the sound at Skywalker Sound, and one of the guys on the team put a sound Easter egg into the movie, and it's just like that. That's the level of love,
and it was based on like his personal experience, like his own personal experience and love for the Nintendo franchise. Like informed his creative decision. So like everybody got in on it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I asked Chris and Charlie this when I was talking to them with, kind of taking the reins of these beloved characters. I'd say Mario, Luigi, and his entire crew are about as recognizable as characters like Mickey Mouse are, right? Like they're just so synonymous with pop culture at this point. What is kind of the feeling of stepping into a leadership role in a film featuring this IP?
I think our goal was just to protect Mario and Luigi and the whole world, like and shield it from any sort of like, oh man, what if we gave Mario like a top hat or something? I don't know. Like what if we made him really cool or something? It's I think we just wanted to just like protect like the core like integrity of the character, and like Michael was saying, like that we hadn't seen a reverential Mario movie before, so we just like wanted to recreate that. But then like it really got into like the details at a certain point, man, where it was like the stitching on Mario's hat, like we got so deep down into the weeds on a lot of this stuff that I don't know. It was an overwhelming experience, I guess I'll say, overall.
Yeah, I would say, I think we've also felt like a big responsibility to Nintendo, and one, first of all, Nintendo was there side by side. I don't think they would have allowed us to ruin it if we tried. We didn't try, fortunately. But they had their first movie. And then after that experience, I think they held on to the character, and it was like maybe this they've been a little obviously careful about putting these characters out in a cinematic universe, and I think we just wanted to reward that trust and show them it's like, okay, just because we know if we screw this up, there's so many other great characters out there who may never get the movie treatment if this went sideways. But I think like I said, everybody loves the characters.
And it almost seems like we're in kind of like almost the first golden age of video game adaptations when it comes to either movies or TVs. The Last of Us just came out, hugely successful. The Sonic movies have been crushing at the box office. I think this movie is going to just do gangbusters at the box office. Why do you think it is that all of these adaptations are suddenly hitting at the quality that they are?
I mean, I think it's because like fans of this stuff are finally old enough to be in these like key leadership positions on these projects to be like, it's got to be like this, A, because I love it, and B, if we don't do it, like people will hate it. They'll be mad at us if we change or adapt things in a way that is not authentic, or it's just like, oh, I thought it would be rad if Mario lived in like a cyberpunk world or whatever. And the technology too. Like the cool thing about the Mario movie is like this movie couldn't have been made in the 80s. Like it would have had to have been live action like they made, or like a hand-drawn feature, So like the cool thing about the look of this movie to me is that like it's all like the state-of-the-art rendering technology at Illumination, like crafting this familiar world. So it's like it feels fresh and new and like tactile, like you can feel it and be there. But it's also like it's a world that you've kind of like been in a lot in over the course of many years playing these games. So yeah, personnel and technology, I think, are colliding at the perfect time.
Yeah, I think maybe in the past it was also like maybe a cynical approach to adapting, people making this stuff that understood it was popular, but maybe didn't understand why it was popular. And the people who are making it now, it's like, yeah, they had emotional experience. So I think it's coming from a less cynical place. It's not coming from, it's like, oh, this stuff is popular, let's see if we can make a big movie. It's like, this stuff is meaningful to us. let's make a movie that sort of matches that meaningfulness. So.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it shows in almost every single scene that, you guys know the source material, and that, Nintendo's involvement is just so evident throughout. Like, what was it like working hand in hand with them on this project?
Nintendo was great. I mean, like the partnership between Illumination and Nintendo is really incredible. Like, I was really worried at first that we were going to be trapped between these two giant like forces, and like we would just be crushed into paste. And we probably were a little bit, but it was a crush of like love, like a bear hug. That was like very comforting in a way. And so they were like an incredible partner to us. Because of the amount of like trust that they had in the filmmakers of this project, and some of the risks that we were willing to take sometimes with characters or ideas, but then also like just helping us whenever we needed some like really like specific research on something, or if we were like adapting one of the character designs for the movie, like they would have like really like insightful feedback for us, where they could break down the exact design philosophy for like Bowser's muzzle. Like, it's kind of based on a tiger, we found out. Like Miyamoto himself actually like drew on an iPad over one of our designs that we were presenting to him, and it wasn't exactly accurate. It was really close, but he's like, oh, you're missing this area here and here, and he like drew on his iPad to explain to us. And this was all over Zoom because it was COVID. So he actually drew on his iPad and then held it up to the screen like this and explained to us. So it was really cool. It's very collaborative, and I had a great time. It was a dream experience, to be honest.
And do you have any other like fun anecdotes of your interactions with Shigeru Miyamoto?
Oh man, fun anecdotes. I mean, yeah, it was. Like I said, it was tough because it was all Zoom based. So, we didn't get to, I don't know, have that kind of like in person kind of back and forth. I think like we may have if we didn't have to deal with that pandemic. Michael, am I blanking on something that
it was interesting to hear him talk also about how he approached designing video games.
This was something that came up.
Some of that, like, it's all experiential based for him, which is very similar to how like Chris Meledandri, who runs Illumination, makes his movies very experiential. Like, they would come up first with a sort of gameplay experience and what was a satisfying gameplay experience, and then create a story around that. And it was like, oh, that in storytelling, you're always like, oh, do character story first. But I think there's a lesson in there. It's like, how does the audience the audience basically, or the player, experience the content, and how important just the experience of whether it's movies or video game is first and foremost, because that almost transcends whatever the story is. So that was interesting. And I was also, I thought he was always so like just so cool in all these meetings, because again, these are his babies, and he's entrusted us to execute a movie. But he never for a second, he was always open and generous with his ideas, and not protective, never saying you can't do that. And sometimes like he was the most like willing to depart from from things that feel like, oh, this you can't do something different. But he always had like an open mind about approaching this for a cinematic experience. So I thought that was cool, because again, it's like he's the father of video games, and it's just, but you see why. It's just a lot of confidence in his approach. So
yeah, that's awesome that you got to kind of get that insight directly from the guy. That's awesome. Yeah. Thinking about like Teen Titans Go to the Movies, there's some very irreverent stuff, as you had mentioned earlier, particularly a scene with Martha Wayne. Was there anything that you kind of tried to sneak into this movie that they were like, maybe that's a little bit too dark or a little bit too irreverent?
No, to be honest, like I really, like Michael was saying, like this is the absolute opposite approach that we took on Teen Titans. I can't remember a moment where I was like, I really want to make fun of Mario here, or whatever. The way I'd want to like make fun of Robin, in Teen Titans. I really just, like we wanted the characters to be fun, and we do have some surprising moments in the movie. I think, like Bowser, I think is a really great character, and I think his adaptation in the movie is what you expect, and then also not what you expect too in some places. So, but no, I don't think, unless I'm blanking on something, I don't think there was anything that we wanted to do that the Nintendo was like, man, what are you thinking? Don't do that.
No, but it also wasn't necessarily the tone for this movie. I mean, I love meta movies, obviously, but I think it was a deliberate choice not to make this a meta, so that first and foremost, we want the audience to believe that this is a world that they want to be in. So, and that this is a venture with stakes and things on the line. And, so I think if we had done, because our Teen Titans Go approach really is about comedy first, and just like what's the most absurd sort of funny or satire, what are we trying to say, and this really was about taking our cues from Chris Meledandri and Miyamoto-san, like experiential, like what is the experiential cinematic version of these characters that we played as kids.
And what was the casting process like when you were kind of landing on this all-star cast of voice actors?
Let me just say, this is my favorite thing, because when I was in film school, people would write scripts, right? And then they'd sit around and they'd go, I don't think Brad Pitt would be good for this, or I don't think, whoever was the huge star of the day. And it's like, I'm like, Brad Pitt's never going to be in your movie, guy. He's never going to be in your movie. It's like, you'd be lucky if Brad Pitt's in your movie. And then, coming to a movie with like the prestige of Illumination and Nintendo and these characters, it's like, suddenly like every single like name is on the board that it wasn't ridiculous. So I wasn't back in film school. It's like I could literally say, what about Chris Pratt or Jack Black, like the most talented people in entertainment today. And so that for me was like kind of like a surreal experience, that they would say yes too. It's like, oh, I could say Chris Pratt and Jack Black and they're going to say, yeah, let's do it. So that was, I think, one of the coolest things about this movie is just like, whatever talent that we wanted to look at, they would actually, take a step back and consider, because these are such great characters. But I don't know, Aaron, I'm probably being too specific to my film school experience.
I think that's the perfect encapsulation of it. But no, it was, we looked at, like the scale of this movie. We wanted the casting to reflect that. It's a really big swing. It's like a really big event. It's like 40 years in the making, essentially. So we just wanted it to be like this kind of really big, like celebratory, huge movie. And so that was part of it. And then we just looked at like who we thought would like embody these characters really well. Like Jack Black as Bowser was actually a little bit of like an outside choice, because like he's kind of like a sweet guy in a lot of movies and stuff that you see him in. But he also, like with Tenacious D, has this like metal side to him, which like we associate with Bowser, so we could get that performance out of him. But when he needs to be sweet or funny, like he can still really pull that off, and it's sometimes even better because he's got this like really villainous performance. So like we just really looked at everybody, like their what they're great at, what we know them from, and we started just making our decisions kind of based on that. And I don't know, I couldn't be happier. It's a wild cast. I mean, when that announcement came out, I mean, everybody's kind of hair blew back, like, what is happening?
And they're all very talented actors and voice actors, obviously, and they all deliver terrific performances. Was there anyone in particular that really surprised you with like how they approached the role, or kind of like how much they really went for it?
I mean, everybody is a superstar on this movie. It's hard to pick. But Jack is just like 120% in the role. I mean, like Chris Pratt is just like put so much of his heart into this movie. You know, like I really feel like he had a big burden to shoulder with this movie. You know, I think I think he's going to change a lot of people's minds if he hasn't already. I think his performance is like really genuine and heroic, and I love him in this movie. Charlie was hilarious, like just the most like energetic guy. Like that to me was like kind of probably our most like kind of pitch perfect casting. Just this kind of really like high energy, anxious guy, and he translated like kind of perfectly to Luigi. Anya, I think was great as Peach. Like the movie adaptation, she has to be, you know, more like we know her from like Super Mario Brothers 2 or like 3D World, where she's part of the party. And not only that, like she's, you know, got this whole kingdom to protect with these toads who are just kind of precious and a little helpless. So like she managed to, I think, find that balance between like being a tough like ruler who would have to stand up to Bowser, but also like finding moments to be really cute and sweet as well. I really liked everybody on the cast, to be honest. I could go on, but
all right. Well, thank you both so much. Aaron, Michael, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I honestly can't wait to see the movie again, and best of luck with the opening weekend coming up here.
Thanks, man. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
We are back, and I hope you enjoyed those conversations with the members of the Super Mario Brothers movie cast. I wanted to wrap up this week, this episode that is basically a Super Mario Brothers movie extravaganza, by giving a full review of the movie itself. So joining me to do that is a very special guest who you've heard on this show before from the Kit and Krysta podcast. It's Krysta Yang. Krysta, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. I love to talk movie with anyone, but mostly I'd love to talk about it with you. So excited to be here.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm so happy you were able to come back. I know it was kind of short notice hitting you up like, hey, come talk the Mario movie with me. But I know you have seen it multiple times. I have now seen it 3 times.
Whoa.
Yes.
I've seen it twice. So you got one up on me. But yeah, I think we both have pretty solid takes now on this movie.
Yes, I think we know where we stand on this film by now. But before we get into that, you and I ran into each other last Saturday night. You expressed the sentiment on your podcast as well, where it was like, all right, we have this screener that we'd like you to attend. And I'm like, okay, I've already seen the movie. Like, do I really need to go to this screener? And then I was later, I was in LA for 9 days, so I did not bring proper premiere attire, but then
you look fabulous. Come on now.
Thank you. I cobbled together some stuff. And they eventually were like, oh yeah, by the way, this is the premiere and all the cast is going to be there, and Shigeru Miyamoto and Koji Kondo and Chris Meledandri, they're all going to be there. And I'm like, well, crap. I wish I knew that before I was on the ground in LA. I could have brought like a suit or something fancy. Or I know Kit, your podcast co-host, was attempting to buy a really awesome blazer to rock at the premiere. Didn't come through.
Yeah, that was interesting. It was the communication was very interesting with what that event was going to be. And I think all of us kind of had the same delightful surprise that it was days before. It was like, oh, this is the world premiere for this movie. And as I was like walking through the airport, getting onto the plane, is when I had the thought hit me like, oh, Mr. Miyamoto is going to be at this thing, isn't he? Like all these Nintendo people are going to be at this premiere. Oh, shoot, that could be interesting. So yeah, we were there. It was glitzy and fabulous, and I think we all had a great time, despite of the outfit problems.
Yeah, I was like, oh, there's a red carpet here. Okay, that's interesting. And they did not let us linger by that thing at all.
I walked get past inside.
They're like, go, keep going, keep walking, keep walking. I'm like, all right, cool. Well, I want to take a picture. But did you have any celebrity encounters at the premiere aside from any of the cast that may have walked by?
Yeah, I actually had my celebrity encounters at the after party.
Okay.
So it was kind of a two-parter that night. We had the premiere, which really truly felt kind of like, I don't know if you felt this too, but it felt like a little mini family reunion, honestly, because it was like weirdly in the same spot where usually E3 is, days after, like not even like 48 hours after the official cancellation of E3. And then all of a sudden we were there with all of our game industry family. And it felt kind of nice, like to hang out. We were hanging out in the lobby and everyone was hugging and chatting and getting excited for this movie. And then afterwards we were at the after party, and that's where everybody was sort of like commingling and catching these great moments with Jack Black and Mr. Miyamoto taking goofy photos together. And I know the other cast members were there as well. So it was a fun time. Like it definitely felt like everybody was in a very celebratory mood.
Yeah, and like the people from Nintendo and I guess like Nintendo adjacent companies, I know they had a couple of PR agencies that were working with them as well.
Sure.
It was basically, it felt like a victory lap for them. Like we got this thing to the finish line. And that was my first time actually meeting Doug Bowser. I ran into him at the lobby of the theater before they let us into the theater.
Oh, wow.
And it was great to chat with him. Yeah, I've met Reggie a couple of times. I've met Shigeru Miyamoto a couple of times now. And it's like, it was great to finally like kind of, round out the Nintendo figurehead.
Folks, yeah. Oh, that's so wild that you've never. This is the first time meeting Doug. They do keep Doug like locked up tight over there at Nintendo for some reason, for reasons. But it was. I also was reunited with Doug, and it was sort of like the first time I had seen Doug after leaving Nintendo. So, not sure if that was going to be like awkward or not, but Doug is like so sweet and so wonderful. We totally hugged it out, and it was great to see him.
Yeah, and he's a great guy. From the short conversation that I had with him,
really
he had some really interesting insight about like what the focus was early on for this movie, and like something that the team was really focused on was like, all right, we need to make sure that it's natural when Mario, who does not typically speak full sentences, speaks full sentences. And he was talking about how Mr. Miyamoto was extremely cognizant of that going into this, and I think they found a good balance with that, which we will talk about more.
Yeah, for sure.
So premiere experience, my celebrity encounter was I was seated directly behind a Backstreet Boy.
Which one?
AJ.
Oh man, that's awesome!
And it's
I'm a '90s child, so I'm a little jealous. I love the Backstreet Boys.
Hey, I am as well. So like, I grew up with like Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and everything.
Me too. So I love that. It's a great one.
Yeah, he was there with what I imagine were his kids, and
so cute.
I think on your podcast you said this as well, where we were sitting in that theater for quite a while before the show actually started.
Yeah.
And, he was doing his best to entertain his kids, which I guess if you're going to have somebody entertain you, you could do a lot worse than like the Backstreet Boys.
Yeah. If your dad was a Backstreet Boy, like I feel like you're entertained. You guys were in the varsity theater. Kit and I were joking around. Like we were in the JV theater for sure, because you guys were in the varsity theater, and you were there to see sort of Mr. Miyamoto's open, right?
Yes. So
it
started off with Shigeru Miyamoto and Chris Meledandri, who's the CEO of Illumination, the studio that made this movie. And they gave kind of like an intro, mostly Shigeru Miyamoto talking to the crowd. And, he came out, it was very funny, like kind of like in English, like, thank you all for coming tonight.
Aww,
I'm very excited. And then he goes, now I'm going to speak in Japanese.
He always does that. He always starts every single one with a little bit of English. He actually does more English than you think. Mm-hmm. He just, I think, is more comfortable when he's expressing himself with a huge crowd like that to do it in Japanese.
That makes sense.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, I could tell just seeing him at the premiere and then having a little reunion with him later at the after party as well. The man was on cloud 9, and he absolutely deserved to be, because what a amazing accomplishment, that was. So
yeah, for sure. And then after he gave his little intro, they started bringing the cast out one by one, at least in my theater. I don't know if you got that in your theater.
Sure didn't.
Oh no. So yeah, like the cast, like I was kind of seated like by the entrance. So like the cast was just like walking right past me.
You're like you gonna touch someone?
I was like, hi Seth, hi Jack,
out.
Hi Chris.
Hey Anya, what's up?
It was very cool to see them up close, and I got a good view of all of them as they walked past.
Very
and then
fun.
They brought them all out one by one. They kind of did like the Little League baseball team pose, where like there was the back line of people, and then they're like, we need to squish closer. So like Chris Pratt and Anya came in like the front.
Yeah,
They did like
you
the
gotta
one
do the.
knee.
I was gonna say you gotta do the sorority squat. That's what you gotta do,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Yeah, yeah. We did get opening remarks from Chris in our theater, so he did come out, and I think our theater was really full of people that from Universal Illumination that worked on the movie because I felt like they were so joyful watching it and as joyful as any Nintendo fan because I think they worked on the movie. And when the credits were rolling, they were all cheering for each other. It was so
that makes
sweet and wonderful. And just like when they saw their coworkers' names, I think they were like excited for each other. So it was really cute.
That's great. And that's interesting that they would put the people who worked in the movie in what you're referring to as the JV theater.
Well, there's not a Backstreet Boy in sight there, so that's why.
Well, they could have had a Backstreet Boy in yours as well. They needed to like have equal distribution of the Backstreet Boys.
That's true. There's many of them, so they could have spread them out a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know how many of them were actually at the premiere. I think it might have just been AJ, unfortunately. That would have been awesome if we got like a full-on Backstreet Boys reunion at that premiere.
I would have fangirled out a little bit for that, I gotta tell you.
It's funny because it was one of those situations where I didn't know who this guy was sitting directly in front of me. However, people kept coming up and taking selfies with him.
Oh, so you're like, he's gotta be somebody.
I was like, it's somebody. And then like I was talking to somebody that does PR for Nintendo currently, and I was like, oh yeah, there's this guy that was like in front of me. He was wearing like this sweater. Like, do you know who this was? He's like, oh, that was the Backstreet Boy. And I was like, what? And I looked it up and I was like, it was the Backstreet Boy.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
So yeah, so the after party, we did the premiere. That was super fun. And then it was like, we got to go kind of cross town, which is not an easy task in Los Angeles.
Not an easy task in Los Angeles.
And we get to this event space where it looks like a school cafeteria from the outside. Like there's a very well lit area, and I'm like, this is the
not
after
the vibe.
Party?
Yeah, not the vibe. But it was cool. They had like all those really cool props outside. Like outside, they had the big, the plumber van, which everyone was taking photos of. That massive question block.
Oh my god, it was huge.
Huge. Kit and I were filming for the vlog that's on our channel now, and I was kind of like doing a funny little comparison, like how big is the question block compared to me? And of course, that was the moment that Mr. Miyamoto found us and waved us over. And I was like, how embarrassing. Like I was like mincing around this question block. And yeah, he was like, oh, hi, Kit and Krysta. And he's like, come over here. And we walked over and had a nice conversation with him. And it was really nice to just be able to tell him, congratulations, and tell him how much we love the movie in person. Because you leave a company, you work with a guy for over 10 plus years, and you never know when you're going to see him again. So it was a nice moment for sure.
Yeah, and that actually warmed my heart to hear you tell that story on your podcast. I was very happy that you got to see him and interact with him.
Yeah,
it's interesting seeing him at like both the premiere and the after party, because I'm so used to like E3 where they keep him so locked away.
I know, right?
And like I was standing at the after party, like the place that I was kind of posted up. There was like at any point I could just look over and it's like, oh, there's Shigeru Miyamoto and Koji Kondo just kind of hanging out. And it was like so surreal because like any glimpses you usually get of him, unless you're interviewing him at E3, is like he's walking past and he's surrounded by like
a million security guards and
exactly. He has like an overshield of security guards around him.
Yeah, it's so true. He was so casual at the event. Usually, he's very personable. When we Kit and I will work with him, and we had plenty of meetings with him where it was we call it dinner with the guy, and it was very, casual. But yeah, when he's in a big public space like that, it is really rare to see him kind of like loosen up, or just kind of be chill. And that's kind of what I saw too. Like he was just he must have been just so happy. He was just having the time of his life. He was enjoying the party. He was enjoying people asking him for photos and hanging out with the cast. And he just seemed like he was really happy. And it made me happy to see that.
And I am shocked he lasted as long as he did at that party, because from what I understand, he arrived about 24 hours prior from Japan.
Yeah, they're good at this now, like they used to do this all the time where they would get there and we would have a meeting with them like 2 hours after they land. And it's like, you good? Like, do you want a nap or a shower or something? Like, it's okay, if you need a minute, but they would always be like, no, we're ready to go. Let's do it. Let's go.
I don't know
I
how
have
they
no
do
idea.
that, because I went to Japan last October and I was an absolute zombie for like 2 days.
Maybe flying first class helps. I don't know.
I'm sure it does. And yeah, so that was the after party, and it was elaborate. Like, you walk in, there was
Oh
kind of
man,
like
yeah.
a field with like mushrooms and like chairs and like question blocks, and Peach's castle straight center with like snacks and drinks and everything.
Mario Kart where you can take those cool photos.
Yeah.
And that weird cupcake thing where you
That
push the
was so
button.
cool.
And the cupcake kit was so weirded out by that. He like stared at this cupcake like, why is it a cupcake? And I was like, what do you mean? Just eat it.
It was a mushroom.
It was
It's
cute.
perfect.
I ate the mushroom cupcake.
It was
good.
delicious. It was
very, very good. Like a red velvet. It was sweet, very sweet.
And then, of course, bars all over the place.
Bars.
And themed drinks. I have the drinks, the list here.
Yeah, it was like the one that I had was the first one, the Smash something. Final Smash. I want to say Final Smash.
There was the Final Smash. I know
Yeah.
that. Sorry, I took a billion pictures, as you might imagine. Okay, so
I
the
know,
Final Smash,
same here.
the Smoke and Fire, and the Kai Piranha plant, which was basically a mojito.
Yeah, yeah. The Smoke and Fire was like a whiskey kind of base thing, right? Is that
The Smoke and Fire was tequila. So it was like
tequila? Like a mezcal.
It was like like a spicy margarita. The Final Smash was like a vodka peach grapefruit.
Yeah, that's what I
grenadine.
had. That was good.
And then the Kai Piranha plant, or I don't know how you pronounce it. That was basically a mojito. So
Yum.
it was pretty yummy drinks.
Pretty yummy. I love the DJ booth too. That was like the flaming Bowser.
That was so cool.
That was very cool. I thought that was amazing. The party really impressed me because I didn't know what to expect. I thought it was going to be sort of more casual, but it was like totally decked out with so many cool like themed areas, and it was so much fun. It was like just amazing to see it.
That was where I had my next two celebrity encounters, where I always have celebrity encounters either entering or exiting the men's room, I found.
Oh my.
Like at E3 one year, like I just totally ran into Kojima in the men's room.
In the men's room. Everyone has to pee, so
exactly. And then this time it was Jack Black.
Oh, cool.
Which
Yeah, I ran into him
at E3
too.
as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, he was everywhere at that party.
He was like into it though. Like, and you can really tell he's just been into it. Like he likes this. He wants to do this. He wants to do the voice. He wants to be there. His suit was so cool. Did you see his suit?
The Bowser shell on the back.
Bowser shell on the back with the flames on the arms. I loved it. He was
awesome.
into it. Yeah.
And then Charlie Day was there from seemingly a less amount of time, but he was there kind of mingling a little bit as well.
Yeah. I saw some photos with people that they took photos with the cast members. So they seemed to be like, they were okay with, being around the normies, I guess.
But I mean, it was interesting because there's probably fewer than 200 people that got to go to this after party, two or 300 maybe at the most.
It's not very many people. I mean, it was not even that crowded in there. So
yeah. And did you find the secret photo op?
The one with the field of fire flowers?
Yes.
Yeah, I did, but I didn't stand in line for it because the line was pretty long. But
I got lucky because two people I knew, we were actually looking for these people. One person who works for Sega and one person who works for IGN.
Oh, cool.
And we were looking for where'd they go? We wanted to say goodbye to them because we were about to leave. And then we saw them and we're like, oh, what's this over here? And we saw the Fireflower thing. And we noticed that they were the ones going into the booth as...
So you crashed their photo op?
So yeah, we crashed their photo op.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it. I was like, I'm not standing in that line. I also
that
found
was
there's
cool. They had like mirrors all around, so it looks like you were in a field of Fireflower. It was neat. It was very clever. Yeah.
It was a very cool room. It's very red. I'm looking at my picture right now. It's kind of
it's a little devilish. But,
it's very, very red. It looks like almost like a Snapchat or Instagram filter where it
does.
Makes you look like a devil.
Yeah. I ran into Doug at the party as well, and we chatted a little bit more. And yeah, it just seemed like everyone was in a good mood, and I was really happy for them. They really did a thing. So. Good for them.
Yeah. So it was a very celebratory tone, and rightfully so. But before we get into our spoiler-free thoughts here, we touched on this a little bit, but the next morning, I spent my Sunday morning with Shigeru Miyamoto and Koji Kondo.
Yeah.
Which I had a 45-minute long interview with them, which is the first time I've actually sat down and conducted the interview with either of them. My first time meeting Koji Kondo overall, but it's my second time meeting Shigeru Miyamoto, and it was just awesome to sit down with these, two bona fide legends, like
literally legends. Yeah.
the guy who made the Mario song and the guy
I
who
know.
made Mario.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Sometimes when you wrap your head around it a little bit, and then when you do, you're like, oh shoot, this is like a big deal.
Yeah, so and it's always interesting because it feels like, I've done a million interviews over the course of my life, but it always feels like such an event when you're going to meet with either Shigeru Miyamoto or Eiji Aonuma, Takashi Tezuka. Like the
Hmm.
Nintendo luminaries always
Yeah,
feel like they're
yeah,
like, okay, are you ready? Are you ready? Okay, let's go. And it's like you're kind of like in a formation as you go to it almost.
yeah.
It's interesting the way it works because like it's always an entourage as well,
Hmm.
especially with Shigeru Miyamoto
Yeah.
and Koji Kondo. It's like there's like 8 people in the
They roll
room.
deep. They roll real deep.
My
Yeah,
my PR guy that was like kind of getting me ready for it was like, just so you know, you're gonna walk into this room and there's gonna be a lot of people in there.
yeah, yeah.
Just don't
They
want you to be caught off guard.
they like that. They like to just have a Spartan formation around the man. So,
Yeah, and they're the most delightful people.
oh
Like
yeah,
Shigeru Miyamoto, I always describe to people when they ask like, "Oh, what's he like in real life?" It's like from my interactions, he is the exact guy you would want to have created Mario. Like he's just a
he's
delight.
the exact person that could. He's like the only person who could have created Mario because of what he's like in real life. You know what I mean? Like my interactions with him have always been just sort of awestruck with his sense of curiosity about life and the joy that he always has about the things around him, and just the sense of like being a child at heart and never losing that spirit. And it's quite inspirational, when you're working with him, and sometimes you have to talk about not so fun things, or
Mm.
you got to do things that are very like business oriented, and he still kind of keeps that sense of who he is all the time. It's like, yeah, this is like not in a million years are we going to ever get someone like him. Like this is a one of a kind,
Oh,
person.
100%. I
Yeah.
mean, it's interesting because the way I've always described him is kind of like the Walt Disney of video games.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
really, he's like the Walt Disney, the Steven Spielberg, who else could you really like throw into that mix? The James
Yeah.
Cameron, like
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly.
it's just like all
Exactly.
of these all in one because he just has such a long and illustrious track record, and he's still
Hmm.
working in creative roles. Like
Yeah.
last week, we had I did a Wind Waker retrospective because it was coming off the 20-year anniversary, and like talking
Yeah.
about his interactions with Eiji Aonuma on that game. And it's
Right.
like, yeah, even though that was 20 years ago, he was still
Like super
working.
involved.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he has the creative fellow over there.
Yeah, and the cool thing about, his career now is that like you can truly tell that he is doing his passion projects. Like he's like, yeah, I'm only going to do stuff that I actually care about. And it is stuff like the movie, stuff like the theme park, like he's always been really interested in these other creative fields that are outside of video games. And so I get the sense that he's just living his best days right now and just still stretching himself creatively, and he's super just like passionate about the stuff that he's doing. And to do that at like 70, in your 70s, like wow, that's like really inspirational. Like what do you think you're gonna be doing in your 70s,
Yeah, probably still working because I don't think I'm ever going to retire.
Yeah, maybe I'll be on a cruise ship or something. But I mean, he's like doing some big boy hits,
He
in his
really is.
70s. It's crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's also the Mick Jagger of the video game industry, apparently. Just going until he can't no more, basically.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah, it's just wild. It's funny because you mentioned like all those things, and I was asking him kind of like, what is it like being at Nintendo in this era? Because like it seems like Nintendo is on fire in a way that like it never has been before. Like the Switch is still selling super well. Super Nintendo World just opened its second location. The Legos are selling really, really well. And by the way, when he heard me mention Legos, he let out a little like joyful laugh, like, "Oh yeah, Legos!" And the movie just hit theaters. So it's like I asked him like, "What is it like to be?" And what changed to like bring on this era? And he pretty much was like, "Yeah, we stopped thinking of like you have to make good games to like get people to like you. Like we just started thinking like we want to deliver experiences that only Nintendo can deliver, and people stopped thinking about Nintendo as like a game studio. And of course I'm very heavily paraphrasing here. They stopped thinking of us as like game makers and started thinking of us as like an entertainment brand.
That is such like a concept that was championed by Mr. Iwata. You know, it's a concept that was championed and talked about so long ago, like 10 plus years ago when I first started, you know, at Nintendo, and we were like deep in the Iwata era and just learning about his vision for Nintendo and like thinking about it not as a gaming company but as an entertainment company. But I think this is the first time this year when we see all of these examples that you just brought up, whether it's Super Nintendo World or the movie or the merch, you know, the brand partnerships with Legos or other merch, it's like truly now that vision from 10 plus years ago has really like come to fruition. That's how long it took, you know, to like get there. But now that you're there, it's really exciting and cool for Nintendo, but it does come with like a slew of other challenges that they're going to have to face as a company that's going to be interesting to see how they kind of navigate through. So yeah, cool, exciting, interesting time. And I think, you know, we were talking about how this is a really amazing time to be a Nintendo fan, but yeah, it's very interesting as well.
I mean, I can't remember a better time to be a Nintendo fan aside from maybe like the 90s when like the Super NES was like tearing everything up and like you're getting excited for the Ultra 64. Like that seemed like maybe the pinnacle of Nintendo excitement, but also I was, like we said, a 90s kid, so like that was like the prime age for like getting into gaming and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm just excited to see where they're going to take it. I think that they have some headwinds and challenges, that things that they've never had to consider and deal with before. They're going to have to face some of those things soon, especially as we think about like what's happening with the next console and all that jazz next year. What does that look like? How are they going to balance all of their resources with all these huge, you know, mammoth properties in entertainment? Like, how are they structured to do this? Like that's some business stuff that gets hard. But you know what? It's not our problem. We get to enjoy it. We get to hang out and watch, and that's good.
By the way, as somebody who worked at Nintendo for many years, my thought on why the Switch has been such a success is that like they finally unified all the developers under one platform instead of having to split time between like the Wii U and the 3DS or the Wii and the DS. Like, do you see that as a valuable thing as I do?
Yeah, I do think that the Switch, and I've heard this from developers before, it's like they kind of tout the Switch as like one of the easiest systems to develop for, and the range of what you can develop on Switch is like pretty broad. Like you can do smaller indie titles, you can do these AAA titles, like the range, the spectrum is pretty big. I think, yes, not splitting your resources and just having the ability to do something that's more like handheld leaning to something that's more like console leaning is, you know, a advantage to Switch. But I think, you know, there's tons of other stuff that makes the Switch like attractive and successful. So yeah, that's another thing. It's like, it's pretty good right now, you know?
Yes, it's amazing.
Don't rock the boat with your next thing.
Oh my God. I really hope it's just like Switch 2.
I know, right? Like, don't get cute, Nintendo. Like, don't. They like to get cute sometimes, though, you know?
We're bringing back the gamepad.
Here comes the Labo. Here comes a cardboard Switch 2. Yeah, you don't want to get too gimmicky with it, which they have a propensity for sometimes, but
they really do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's amazing that we have a console that has Pokemon and Fire Emblem, but also all the new Zelda and Mario and Mario Kart games and everything. I mean, Mario Kart game.
All these great retro games too. Like you got Game Boy Advance stuff on there now, and it's like, don't mess with it. When that next system comes, just bring that all over. Like don't be cute. Yeah.
I mean, I think that we're in an era where it's like backwards compatibility is like almost a necessity at this point.
It's a standard practice now. Like, but you never know. Nintendo's not very good with backwards compatibility. So.
Yeah, nor are they like good at like following industry trends, because they love marching to the beat of their own drum.
They do. They have some moments where they're like, you tell them a thing and they're like, why is that important? And you're like, oh, okay, we gotta start from square one here, huh? Okay, got it.
But you can find the rest of my Shigeru Miyamoto and Koji Kondo interview. I asked them questions like, what has their collaboration been like evolving over the last 38 years? I asked them like, are there any other franchises you could see coming to the silver screen? I mean, obviously I did not get a direct answer there, but I got some hints.
Did you like seed Zelda? Like, did you kind of like mind meld with them and be like, Zelda?
I wanted to so bad. If I had time, I totally would have been like, I don't know, Zelda seems like a pretty good one. I did end on a joke though, because like they were very cautious of like, we're only talking about the Super Mario Brothers movie. Please don't ask about any other like games or like initiatives or anything like that. And then when I was told like, all right, your time is up, I said, all right, now I have about time for about 50 more Zelda questions. If you have like a moment. And they all laughed, and I was like, all right, yeah, let's go.
And then you were shepherded out of the room.
Yeah, I was like, I got Brian.
Kicked out.
And stay out.
Have to try. I mean, hey.
So let's transition to our thoughts on this movie. We're going to start off with the spoiler-free thoughts. So if you're still on the fence or still waiting for your ticket time to come up, you're safe. You are safe for the time being, but we will transition at one point to spoiler-filled thoughts, but not yet. So, Krysta, I think you and I are on the same page that we both had a great time with this movie, but what are your overall spoiler-free thoughts on this film?
Yeah, I had a great time with this movie. I think that it had just this element of joy. Like if you grew up with these characters, if you grew up playing, Mario games and being, immersed in the Mushroom Kingdom through these games all these years, what a fabulous thing to see sort of transformed into a movie, and what a cool way to see some of your most favorite characters, in this way. And yeah, I left the theater both times with just this sense of joy. Like, this is like your childhood dream come true, on the screen. Like, who would have thought that we would get something like this when you were a kid playing your NES? Like, who would have thought that this would be the future for this character? And I was just so happy to see it, come to life in this way.
Absolutely. And I think that people who listened to this episode from start to finish, they heard my conversation with Seth Rogen, and we had a moment where like, we were talking about like, why did you want to do this? And he's like, oh, they're putting in all these resources. And I wanted to be a part of the movie that 11-year-old me, when I saw the 1993 film, wish he would have seen coming out of it. And I asked him like, is this the movie you wish you would have seen? He said, oh yeah, absolutely. And I have to agree with him 100%. Like, this was the film that when I went to that 1993 Super Mario Brothers movie and like came out so disappointed. This is what I wish I would have seen. Like something that's, it's respectful of the source material. It actually feels like I'm watching something that is influenced by the game, not just something that is
referential to the game. Yeah,
that's Mario in name, that's Luigi in name, but and I guess that's Yoshi. But like, this is just a joyful experience. It's something that it's chock full of references. Like, don't go into this thinking you're not going to get some Mario references, because boy howdy, do they throw some Mario references at you. Oh
man, some deep cuts. There's so many little things to discover. Even when I watched it the second time, I was noticing more things. And that was such like a game thing, for you to keep like replaying a level and finding these little secrets everywhere. That's so true to how Nintendo makes games. That's another thing that I really loved about the movie, is that it just felt like very true to a video game. Like, there are moments in there where platforming is, a huge spotlight. And it just made it feel like, this makes sense in this universe. This makes sense for it to be a game that's now transformed into a movie,
For sure. And I think the big thing that a lot of people were worried about coming into this was the voice acting. People were rebelling in the streets that Chris Pratt could voice Mario. And I will be honest, like, I was unsure of it at first when they first announced it. I thought that, just thinking purely before seeing the movie, when they announced it, I was like, oh, Jack Black as Bowser makes perfect sense.
Totally.
Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong makes perfect sense. The other ones, I was a little like, what?
Yeah.
But I came out of this so impressed by every single voice actor.
Yeah, I was definitely worried about Chris Pratt. I was very concerned that that was going to just kind of break the movie for me. And I think, Kit and I were talking about this on our podcast as well, is like the best thing that Chris Pratt did for this movie was to be as like inoffensive and as bland as possible. Like he just was very like even keel. He did the voice. He didn't try to get all zany and crazy and weird. He just did it in a way where it was not a distraction. And you are free to concentrate on like the character building they do for Mario and Mario's story throughout the movie instead of being like distracted by some like zany voice that Chris Pratt is trying to do. So I think in that respect, it was like a huge sigh of relief. And I agree with you. I think the other voices, my favorite is Bowser for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and also Princess Peach. Like Anya was amazing as Princess Peach, and I never seen her in a role that was so playful. Like she's always like very serious in her movies, so it's kind of nice to see a very like playful side of her for Princess Peach.
By the way, did you see her at the premiere at all?
I saw her at the after party, but I didn't see her.
I didn't see her at the after party.
Yeah, I saw her for like a split second. She was there. She looked very cute in her like Mario Kart outfit.
Yeah, she rocked a Peach Mario Kart outfit, which was incredible.
That's cool. Yeah.
So I think that she had the second best outfit of all the premiere attendees, right behind Jack Black.
Jack Black, yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
Perfect. So any other spoiler-free thoughts before we transition over to kind of spoiling this movie and kind of breaking some stuff down for the people who have seen it or who want to be spoiled?
Let's get spoiling.
All right. So we're going to take a couple seconds here to give those people a chance to get their pause button if they don't want to get spoiled, and we will be right back with spoilers. All right, so now we are going to give a full spoiler warning right here. We're going to be breaking down some of our favorite moments of the Super Mario Brothers movie. So if that is not what you were looking for, then now is your chance to turn it off. But Krysta, let's start with some of our favorite references, because this movie, as I said before, chock full of references, so many nods to Mario, to the universe that surrounds Mario. So what were some of your favorite references?
Yeah, the Easter eggs were like in full effect in this movie. It was coming at you so fast. It was hard to like, as soon as you notice one, another one would pop up. But just like right in the beginning of the movie, there was several just really cool references like the Punch Out Pizza. You got Charles Martinet voicing the guy that's playing like Jumpman on an arcade machine. And then I think my favorite sort of in the front half of the movie was when Mario is playing NES. He's playing Kid Icarus on the NES. And in his room, you can see like all sorts of other cute little Nintendo references as well. So yeah, there's just so many like visual Easter eggs in the movie that I really loved.
Yeah, and it really got me thinking. It almost broke my brain when he was playing the NES in his room, because it was like, what does the NES even exist? Like, how does it exist without Mario? I know it did exist like without Mario for a stretch, but like, what does that even look like in modern day Brooklyn when he's playing NES and there's no Mario game?
Yeah, I know that you can't think too hard about that kind of stuff because it will break your brain. Because I also had a thought and I was like, no, don't try to put the pieces together because it's going to be confusing. But yeah, I wonder why they like picked that game, like why Kid Icarus, like why those things. Like I wonder what kind of was driving that. But yeah, super interesting to see. Like that's an interesting visual of Mario playing an NES, So it's very, very cool.
And I loved, speaking of like those kind of references before he even goes to the Mushroom Kingdom to like Nintendo's past, the Wrecking Crew reference with Spike.
Yes.
Like that was great. That it's like, oh yeah, you left Wrecking Crew to become a plumber because of Mario being in Wrecking Crew or a Jumpman or whatever his name was at that point.
Right.
That's such a smart reference. And then
so cute.
Of course, the GameCube ringtone.
Oh, with Luigi's phone.
Yes.
Yeah, when mommy calls. Yeah, I love that. I was like, oh, that's perfect. I can make that my ringtone. That's a good one.
it's so reminiscent of a ringtone. I never really put it together in my head, but I'm like, that really
Yeah.
does. Because like at first it like didn't even register with me. I'm like, why does that sound familiar? And then like the second time it played, I'm like, oh, it's the GameCube
It's the
tone.
GameCube tone. Yeah, you're like, I know this song. Like, I know this tone.
Yes.
I love the fancy house they go into as well to like their first sort of plumbing job is to fix the leak in the fancy house.
Mm-hmm.
If you look around that house, it's like so many cool Nintendo references, but done in like a super classy way. So they had like a very like MoMA modern art looking statue of a Pikmin in that house. They have like all this artwork, but it's all like Nintendo references, but like modern art style. Like I would like my house to look like that, honestly. So can they just decorate my house like that? That'd be great.
It's what we all aspire to be as
Right?
adult gamers. We want to have game art, but we want it to like be fancy,
It
right?
needs to be classy. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was an amazing scene. I love that the plumbing scene where they're trying to fix the plumbing. The dog's losing its mind at them.
Losing his mind. That dog looks like that dog from Up.
Does it? Okay. I thought it was Secret Life of Pets that it looked like.
Oh, I guess you're right.
Because that was also Illumination.
That's an Illumination movie, isn't it? I never seen that movie.
I didn't either, but I think I've seen that dog or something like that dog in.
That dog is very aggressive.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, a monster dog.
Isn't that like what he was trying to do though? Was break his bone? Like dogs. I don't know. Again, one of those things you shouldn't think too hard because it is a family movie. They needed the loosest reason for this dog to be mad at the Mario Brothers.
Exactly.
So I also loved that Pauline is seemingly the mayor of Brooklyn.
She is the mayor. Yeah.
That was interesting to me.
Yeah, I guess that New Donk reference has always been like a New York City comp. So that made sense to me that she would be cameoed as the mayor here in the movie as well, which is great.
Did they ever actually refer to it as New York? Or was it just Brooklyn and Queens that they referenced?
They say Brooklyn and Queens. I don't think they ever say New York.
So it could be New Donk City.
New Donk City's Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, you're right. It could be.
Also, one thing that I loved was every time they brought up a world map, it looked like Super Mario World.
Yes.
That was incredible.
That was so cool. I love that. It was so much fun to see like those visuals just like taken straight, like basically copy pasted straight from the games.
Mm-hmm.
Once you like sort of get into the Mushroom Kingdom, there's just so many things where you're like, oh yeah, I guess that would be how that would work. Like the way that they collect coins, the little toads are running around collecting coins. And then they have that antique shop and all the antiques are like old game things, like an old NES cartridge and an old some old like items from past games. Like, yeah, that I guess that would be how it would work, in this universe.
Yeah, I mean, there were some very heavy-handed references, like it'll work, you just got to blow in it.
Yeah.
Like that was like, okay, we're getting a little ham-fisted there, but overall, like I don't think the references were like disruptive of anything. Like I've seen some video game movies where it's like they stop everything, they slam on the brakes to make sure they hit you over the head with a reference.
Like, did you catch that? Did you get it?
I don't know if you saw the Uncharted movie, but there was one scene that. I don't want to spoil it, but there's a scene where they just stop everything for like a miniature scene that lasts like 10 seconds. And it's just like a nod to like, hey, fans of the Uncharted video games, you'll know what this is, but we're not going to explain it. So yeah. And even like Tom Holland was like, what? Like he even like on the screen, he looked like, why are we doing this?
Oh gosh, that sounds really awkward. Yeah. I didn't get that sense here. Not super awkward.
Mm-hmm.
Like slam on the brakes to do a reference, but yeah, I thought that they definitely came at you fast. I see that a lot of people are saying like, oh my gosh, the pacing of this movie is a little frantic.
It is.
But I think it does keep it moving, and you get that sense of like this is like an action game, action movie. Like it feels like it's moving the plot along at a very quick pace.
It's breezy. It's easy to watch. It's not something
it's not that long. Yeah.
It's like 90 minutes, 92 minutes. I think that includes the credits.
Right. No, it's good actually, because you don't want to drag it out,
Yeah, especially when you've seen it 3 times in the course of like 10 days, like I have.
Exactly. Wow.
And then I liked the Baby Mario and Baby Luigi throwback.
Oh, I like that too. I loved one of the things that I really love about this movie is that you get a deeper sense of these characters' relationships, not just like their own personal story, but their relationships with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's something you never really think about. You play Mario games, you're like, oh yeah, Mario and Luigi are brothers, great. But then in this movie, you get a real sense of like what that brother relationship is like. They're not just brothers, they're like best friends. They grew up, really close. Mario grew up defending Luigi, which was like that really great baby Mario, baby Luigi scene that you're referring to. And it really motivates their characters throughout the movie, and it makes it believable because if your brother is in danger, you're not gonna stop at anything to save him, to help him, and they make it really clear through those like moments where you get to reflect on their relationship, which I thought was really heartwarming and sweet.
Oh, definitely. And I guess that leads into kind of like our favorite moments and like kind of story-based moments and action moments. I really liked the way that they kind of flipped the script a little bit. Like Luigi was the one that Mario was trying to rescue. It wasn't Peach.
Right.
But yet Peach was still being kidnapped and being forced to marry Bowser without kind of giving into the damsel in distress trope. It was more of just like, okay, she's doing this to try to prevent harm coming to her toads. Like she's doing it as a strong leader, not like oh my god, I'm so helpless, like please come rescue me, Mario.
Yeah, I was really glad to see a real kind of rewrite of Peach's character, because in the games she's pretty bland. You don't know very much about her. I mean, there's some games where she has a little bit more personality and more agency, but for the most part, she's been in that damsel in distress role for a pretty long time. And I got a little concerned, I gotta tell you, when they had like the forced marriage stuff. I was like, oh, where are they going with this? Let's not have another like weird, damsel in distress moment. But no, it was great that she sort of had a plan for all of the things that she was doing in that arc. But yeah, I think her character was one of the ones I was kind of worried about, because she's just been stuck in this role for so long that I was curious of how they would reshape that in the movie. And I thought they did a really good job. And it was cool to see Peach sort of as Mario's like equal partner. And even in some cases, like kind of better than he is. That training scene is great where she just like kicks butt all the way through and he struggles, to like get through the course. And it's kind of cool to see that side of her.
And that leads directly into another, like, I guess, trio of sequences that I love. I love all the platforming scenes. Like, and that should be a no-brainer for a Mario movie, but like it could have been really easy to not nail that. So there's the one in the beginning where they're trying to get to their job, the one where they're playing No Sleep Till Brooklyn.
Yeah.
There's the training sequence, and then there's the one with Mario and Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
God, those were all so much fun and so well executed and so well framed.
Yeah, I thought it was great that they did a platforming scene before he goes to the Mushroom Kingdom. That was a great way to like set your brain, like sort of like get your brain in the mood for like a movie based on a video game. Like it's such a clever way to do that. And then, yeah, of course, the training scene is like iconic because there's just so many funny moments in that scene, like him trying to like eat mushrooms that he very much dislikes. That's actually really cute too, how they put that in. Like he actually hates mushrooms.
Yes.
And he's trying to eat it. And I love that part where he like eats so many, like throws it up, and then like he like, loses the power up.
That's one of the funniest moments in the movie.
That's great. It's such a like, of course that would happen if you eat like 45 mushrooms in one sitting. You would probably puke,
Especially mushrooms the size of your head.
I know. And she's just like shoving it into his mouth. Like she's like, down the hatch.
And I love that like the demonstration when he first had his initial mushroom was like, oh, you're strong too. And he jumps up and breaks the brick. And it's like, oh, he couldn't do that when he was little. It's just
and it's true. Like then my mind was like, oh yeah, he couldn't do that when that makes sense. The strength, not just height. Okay, like I like was neat to like wrap my head around some of these concepts,
Yeah, and it was so cool to see that sequence and like all set to Holding Out for a Hero or by Bonnie Tyler, right?
Yeah.
And it synced so well with like the training montage. I mean, it's an all-time
You
great
need
montage
you
song.
need a training montage in this game. I'm sorry, in this movie, and it was perfect that they put it into this like sort of, almost like a true Mario level. Did this not make you want Mario the movie, the game that I've been talking about for like years now?
I mean, I even asked Shigeru Miyamoto, how will the movies, because like the games obviously influence the movies, how will the movies influence the games going forward?
Yeah.
And he was like, that's something we're going to have to reckon with, because we've always had like movies that influence the games. Like not Mario movies, not
Right.
Nintendo movies, but like, we'll watch movies in the 80s and like, oh, we should like have something
Put
like
this
that in our
Yeah,
game.
exactly.
And now he's like, there's probably going to be a point where the Mario movies or the Nintendo movies are going to influence the Nintendo games. And that's something we're going to have to figure out as we go.
Just give us Mario the movie, the game. Like
I've been waiting
literally.
for Lego Mario, like a
Oh,
collaboration
Lego
with, because there's so many Lego games that are all
That's
licensed.
cool. Yeah.
Like I'm
I like
shocked
that.
we haven't gotten that, given like how in depth the collaboration is with Nintendo.
Yeah.
That's something that I've been waiting for an announcement. Like every single E3 or Summer
You're
Games
like,
Fest, I'm like,
is it
come
now
on.
the time? Yeah.
But I'm shocked we haven't gotten that yet. So
Yeah.
some of the fight sequences were actually really good. We mentioned the wedding scene. I really enjoyed seeing Peach like just fending off all the wedding guests, because they're all bad guys. They're all people that Bowser.
Like King Babam is there.
Oh my god! And King Boo.
King Boo is there. Yeah, I love that. They're all Bowser's minions at the wedding. Yeah, but I love the how she hides the power up in her bouquet.
God, that was so smart.
So cute, and it totally made sense. Like that. Of course, that's why she agreed to this in the first place.
And that's why you remember Toad was the one who gave her the bouquet.
And he's like, I got it. And she's like, oh, good.
She's like, oh, it's perfect.
You came through, and I love that scene as well. You see sort of these really unique power-ups, not just a regular old mushroom, but like the ice flower, the tanuki suit, even some of the stuff. I like that fight scene with Mario and Donkey Kong.
Oh, it's
that
great.
was great.
Yeah.
Although I was a little bit like shocked that they had him scratch him in the face so hard that it drew like blood a little bit. Like it was like red, right? Not like
it's like a red
gushing,
scratch mark. Yeah.
Not like gushing, but like I was like, oh my gosh, he's like, it's like kind of violent. He's like drawing blood.
Well, that was something that like I was very shocked about, because you'll remember that like you may have heard of this company Nintendo. They don't really do like this person died. They don't do like
no.
There were so many references to like
I'm gonna kill your brother.
Yeah,
was the line in the movie.
Yeah, like we'll see how strong you are when I kill your brother. It's like, oh my god, and like there were several times of like dying.
Yeah, they used to when Kit and I were at Nintendo and we were filming videos like Nintendo Minute stuff. Like we were not allowed to say the word die.
Oh wow.
We had to say like
lost a life,
or not even. I don't think we can even say lost a life. I think we had to say like, oh, we some like gamey way of getting out of it. But yeah, we could not say like die, death, any of that.
That's so yeah, because
crazy.
They went a little dark with some of the stuff. Like again, I want that to be like what Bowser says, because like
that makes sense for that character.
Like, one of the coolest scenes that Bowser had was when he's melting that ice castle that the penguins were in.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh man, okay, this Bowser's
he's really powerful.
Yeah.
And like, also evil.
Yes, and he is just melting this entire kingdom because he wants the superstar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really great. And I love that there were references from everything straight, like all the way back to before Super Mario Brothers. We mentioned like Donkey Kong, we mentioned Punch Out and Wrecking Crew, but also as recent as Bowser's Fury with the music that was playing at like the Bowser party after he got the superstar.
Yeah, exactly. Like the rock anthem that was like,
the Fury Bowser song, the theme when he comes out. Yes, that was so cool. And like Jack Black perfectly cast as we thought prior to the movie, but seeing it, it's like, oh yeah, he went for it. I would say that he went for it, and Keegan-Michael Key as Toad really, really went for it. Like they gave their all.
I might disagree with you a little bit on the Toad.
Really?
I was a little confused by that character, actually. I was like, is he supposed to be like Chef Toad or Captain Toad? Like, what is the comp here? And then and the voice acting, I thought that, I mean, I don't want like an annoying Toad voice for 90 minutes, obviously, but like it needs to be a little bit more annoying. to make it believable. I don't know.
I mean, it was annoying enough. I thought it was the right annoying level without annoying me every time he talked, right?
Sure.
It was
no, you don't want
that's
that.
a weird one.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I thought his voice, like if you listen to Chris Pratt as Mario, if you listen to Jack Black or Seth Rogen, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's who that, like if you gave me like 3 guesses to who those were without knowing.
You could just tell that they're just doing their own voice. Well, Seth Rogen did say in that interview, like, I don't do voices, so this is just my voice.
Yes, 100%. That's what he told
Seth
me.
Rogen, yeah.
And so that was like immediately recognizable, all of their voices. Keegan-Michael Key, you could have given me 20 guesses and I probably would not have come to that being him.
Sure. I don't even know his voice that well, his real voice. I think I've seen him in like 1 or 2 things, but yeah, you're right. He changed his voice the most, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought that he and Jack Black were maybe the ones that went for it the most in terms of like
Jack Black for sure went for it. Like you can tell that he just was having a blast doing the voice, and so that's why it comes through as like so committed,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah. And speaking of Jack Black's Bowser, we have to talk about the song.
Oh, the song.
Peaches. Yeah. I don't know why he went to Peaches instead of just saying Peach, but
I love Peaches, and now it's Peaches forever. So
yes. And it is at first I was like, of course they're doing a song. They have Jack Black playing this character, so of course he's gonna sing. But at first I was like, this is gonna be embarrassing. And upon hearing it for like the 3rd time, I was like, okay, I kind of like it. It's like, it goes on just long enough before Kamek interrupts him.
Yeah.
And yeah, so any other scenes that you really loved? I think there's one glaring one that we're leaving out right now.
Oh, I do have one, and you bring up Kamek at a perfect time because I do love some of the interactions between Bowser and Kamek. Kamek is like the perfect sort of like henchman character. He even has sort of like the Igor, like, kind of that kind of voice and tone, which is great. Mm-hmm. And there's a great scene where Bowser is practicing his proposal, and Kamek is dressed like Princess Peach. I think I laughed for like 10 minutes. I was laughing for a long time. It was funny. It was just like, got big old glasses on, but the wig and the dress, and he's got this great, like real bad, like pickup line, like, love really makes a guy come out of his shell. And you're like, oh, face palm. You imagine like someone saying that to you and you're just like cringe on the inside, but it's perfect.
I love that Kamek was so in like the role play aspect of that like when somebody came in to interrupt it, it wasn't just Bowser that got upset at them. It was Kamek that got upset as well. Like they both turned like, what?
Like, we're busy.
And then like when Bowser actually delivered that line to Peach, and he looks over at Kamek, I told you that line wouldn't work. And
Kamek is like, you're doing great.
There were some like genuinely funny moments in the movie.
It really was. Yeah, like, I definitely was. And I saw it twice. And I laughed a second time too. So I was laughing. I
think I liked it the second time the most out of my 3 times seeing it. I think I just picked up more. I knew what to expect. And I will say that the glaring omission that we're leaving out here so far is that about halfway through the movie, it just turns into a Mario Kart movie for about 20 minutes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was like, how are they going to weave this in? Because we saw so much Mario Kart reference in the trailers, mm-hmm. and I was always wondering, like, what is going on with these carts? Like, is it some sort of fan servicey little reference scene, 20 seconds of a cart? But it's like a big part of the movie, like a big part of the plot. And
it makes sense because they're like, yeah, we just got to get back there before Bowser can, and we're going to take the shortcut through Rainbow Road. And like that was such a smart way to implement that.
Totally. And I really liked how they kind of have this lore that was built that like the cons are the ones that are like the cart experts. Like I never thought that would be a thing. Like you never know who's building the actual carts. You just like have the carts, you know what I mean? But like they have a whole thing where it's like, oh, they kind of set you up in the very beginning when they go to the Jungle Kingdom that like carts is like a big deal here. They're the ones that are engineering, the cons are the ones engineering these carts. And that's why, they sort of have that Mario Kart integration into all of it, but I loved it. I loved they're like picking the
Yes.
their tires and bodies, and just like you would do in the game, and their faces is like my face when you pick you pick your card and she hits that like giant A button. You're like, okay, I get it.
It was awesome.
I feel it.
And then the lead up to that scene, like when they're trying to get to Cranky Kong and they're riding in the back of the monkey's cart. And
Oh
that
my
was so
God.
much fun. And the fact
I
that
love that scene.
that was so much fun with Take On Me.
Got the aha song going.
Yes.
And like he's wearing like the 80s blazer with the sleeves rolled, the white blazer with the sleeves rolled up. And you're like, what's happening?
And he throws the banana peel, and like the random guy just like he's like, oh no, and he
Totally
skids and
spins
it
out.
blows up. Like it wasn't just he like crashed. His cart blew up, and he's probably dead now.
He's probably dead. He's like monkey goo now. But yeah, it's pretty funny.
Monkey goo.
I love how he like drives off the end, and they're just like what is happening? And then the glider comes in. You're
Yes.
like, oh yeah, the glider. Yeah, the card scenes were good. Like there's like the anti-grav, they get that in there as a pretty key scene, and they have the gliders, the blue shell, that was cool. I had audibly gasped when that guy turned into a leader shell. I was like, oh, that's how they get the shells. That makes sense. It's like a Koopa,
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I never thought about it, but yeah.
And there's one part that and we can transition into things that we didn't like about the movie. If there's anything that really sticks out to you that you didn't really care for, there were only 2 scenes that really seemed like they were kind of pumping the brakes. But I don't think it was long enough that it really felt like they were like slamming on the brakes to the point that like the momentum of the movie would stop. One of those was like when they were eaten by the eel. And Mario and DK were just kind of like talking for a little bit. I was like, okay, this is getting a little slow. And also when they were descending into like the sewers initially, like under Brooklyn before they found the pipe, I thought that scene went on just a little bit too long as well.
Yeah.
But the thing that like I wish that we saw more of was I wanted to see Donkey Kong and Bowser fighting, because like Donkey Kong is like this big physical presence and Bowser's this big physical presence. I know we got a little bit of that at the end there.
At the very end, yeah.
But it was mostly cut away to like Mario hiding out in the Punch Out Pizza and then seeing the commercial. And then we cut back and Bowser has like Donkey Kong by the throat. And it's like, oh, I guess Bowser won. But like it would have been cool to see a little bit of that play out.
Yeah, especially because you get the sense of how strong Donkey Kong is when he's fighting Mario. He's just like this big, honking presence. You're right, totally. I would have loved to see more of that face off. The other thing that kind of bothered me a little bit was I was confused about Donkey Kong's age. Like it really confused me because I thought he was an adult, but then like watching this movie, it was very much like he's like a teenager, like he's like a 17-year-old or something.
Oh, really? Did they like ever specify that?
I don't know. I just felt that's what that character felt like. It was very much like a teenager, like a young, a sort of a young adult, like a not a full grown person, Monkey Kong, whatever, seeking approval from his dad. Cranky Kong as the dad too was weird for me. It's like, aren't you like real old to be the dad? I mean, it's like I couldn't wrap my head around the whole like Kong family tree here. Yeah, that was a little weird. That took me out a little bit because I was like, I don't understand how these characters would relate to each other,
Yeah, and it's interesting because Cranky Kong is definitely older than like a dad of a 17-year-old would typically be, if that's how old they actually were going for with him. Yeah. And it's also interesting because like, I think that the official Cranky Kong lore is that's the original Donkey Kong. Right. And, then we get the rare version of Donkey Kong, which has just persisted as like the canonical Donkey Kong ever since Donkey Kong Country. Right. And it's like, all right, well then like how does this fit in? Because Donkey Kong exists in the human world. Yeah. So we saw Giuseppe, the guy playing Donkey Kong, in there, and it's like, okay. So there's a lot of things that are weird, like brain breaking there. Yeah. But yeah, anything else you didn't really care for in there?
I feel like the cons were like my biggest like weird moment. I also didn't really like Cranky Kong. I think that was a weird character. It was. It wasn't really what I expected of Cranky Kong. Like he wasn't even that cranky. He was just kind of like mean, or not mean, but he was just sort of like brass, I guess. Or maybe you're kind of a Disney fan. Does he remind you of King Louie from the Jungle Book and not really Cranky Kong?
Yeah. He does.
right?
Wow, I didn't even draw that connection.
He's
But
a
yeah,
King Louis, but not like a Cranky Kong. So I was like weirded out by that a little bit too.
yeah. But like, if you remember, Cranky Kong's like persona in the entire like first Donkey Kong Country was just like him complaining about how video games are too graphically impressive nowadays. And
Yeah, and he like hits him. He only hit him with a cane like one time. I'm like, you need to hit him with like a lot more times.
I will say that Cranky Kong and Luigi were both kind of like underserved in this movie. Like, yeah, Luigi had some heroic moments later on, and Cranky Kong was kind of like, the king of the Kongs.
Yeah.
But like, Luigi was just kind of hidden away for most of it, and he had some cool
Yeah.
moments like throughout. Like, I loved like the Dry Bones sequence.
Yeah, the Shy Guy sequence was pretty good in that
Shy Guys,
castle.
yes,
Shy Guys are scary, man.
they
I don't
really
want
are.
to meet one in the dark. That's not great. Yeah,
I thought
and
we
then
were gonna go ahead.
I was gonna say the other sort of character that I thought was just real bizarre was that Luma. That Luma was. What's the deal? Like, are they trying to? Is there some sort of like secret reference to Galaxy? Is a Rosalina going to show up in the next one or whatever? I don't know.
Well, they said like there's many galaxies in the universe, so
They
like that.
do say that, yeah. And there's a Luma.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it weird to you? This isn't something that I necessarily like didn't like, but Mario got a ton of power-ups in it. The Fire Flower, perhaps his most iconic power-up aside from the mushroom.
He didn't get that.
Peach got it, Donkey Kong got it. Mario came close to getting it in the Donkey Kong battle, but he never actually got it.
Yeah, that is interesting. We never saw Mario in the iconic Fire Flower outfit.
It's just a weird thing all around with that, but not necessarily something I didn't like. Just something an observation I made over the course of my, 4.5 hours seeing this movie. I spent 4.5 hours with this movie now.
Seeing this movie, you're probably gonna see it again.
I'll see it again. I think it comes to Peacock in like 45 days. I think after.
Oh, gosh, Peacock is the service. Ugh.
Yeah, well, remember NBC Universal is the company.
It's a little unfortunate, but whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be able to buy it digitally if you just want to watch it on Amazon.
We need a director's cut.
Oh man. Yeah, well, I mean, there's already so much. Like that was what Shigeru Miyamoto told me was like, yeah, we were originally thinking like, oh, maybe we create an all new character or something for this, but then we're like, no, let's start with Mario stuff.
Oh my god, thank God they didn't do that. Can you imagine how weird that would have been?
It would have been. I hope they don't do it for like the first 3 movies. Like,
well, there's another movie coming. Should we talk about the end credit stuff?
Yes. So that's what I wanted to get to wrap up our conversation here. Is where does the series go from here? Because we saw 2 end credit scenes, one being Bowser singing Peaches again, but then it's like it turns out he's just in like the little cage, and Toad's like, hey, shut up. And then
he's gonna like, this is a very dicey situation because the what they set up in the movies is if you get hit, you lose the power up. So like, could he just body slam himself into the sides of this cage to like quote unquote get hit and then become Big Bowser and just like wreak havoc again? Like, this is a dicey situation to keep him in the tiny cage, don't you think?
Here's what I think is going to happen. They've already established they have spies within the Mushroom Kingdom, because remember Kamek, and he keeps coming up and like, hey, like our person is saying
Kamek is not caught. He's gonna break him out of jail.
So I think there's going to be an undercover Toad or something like that that's going to set him free, and then we're going to get Bowser on the loose again.
Bowser's gonna be on the loose, of course. Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think we're gonna get like Wart or anything like that.
We haven't even seen Bowser Jr. We haven't seen any of that stuff. There's like a lot of blatant character omissions. Obviously, there is sort of on the enemy side, like Bowser Jr., like other Bowser-ish or other enemies. But then we do see like the end credit scene with a Yoshi egg about to hatch.
Yes.
There's also a Yoshi egg at the wedding on the gift table, unhatched.
Honestly, I thought they were going to do that where like Yoshi would hatch to save the day. Like I thought that's what they were going to go, but no, they saved that.
That would have been great. Yeah, they're going to save it for. You do see a scene too where like just the wild Yoshis are running around. Like you see like a little like colorful, like, the pink Yoshis or whatever. But you don't see like the Yoshi, like the one that Mario rides.
Which I thought was surprising, because I thought they were just going to save any references to Yoshi being in like a sequel.
Yeah, I wasn't sure where they were going to go with it, but Yoshi's such an important, sort of evolution of Mario that I'm sure they have a bigger plan for Yoshi, which is probably why they put that in the end credit scene. if I don't see a baby Yoshi, I will literally riot. So, like, where is the baby Yoshi? Make like a million merch things with baby Yoshi. This could be the baby Yoda of Nintendo.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like
Can
Baby
you
Yoshi is
imagine
so.
how cute that would be?
But the sound they made, or the sound that Yoshi made, was adult Yoshi.
If that Yoshi egg does not hatch a baby Yoshi, I literally will riot. It's over. Nintendo, listen up.
So yeah, I think that the end credit scene set up some cool stuff.
Yeah.
And did you catch that? It's another very weird reference that exists. They reference the Koopalings very briefly.
Yes, I was looking very closely at that scene with the rock music, like the he's looking at the army. I was like, are the Koopalings in there? Is there a thing? But I didn't see any Koopalings. So yeah, I feel like that's another one that's a big sort of enemy kind of upgrade for Bowser to get more power or something. I don't know.
Well, the piano is the brand is Ludwig von
Ludwig
Koopa.
von Koopa. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was like the only reference that I caught to the Koopalings, which surprised me because I'm assuming they're going to bring them in at some point. What do you think comes in first? Do you think it's the Koopalings, Bowser Jr., or Wario and Waluigi?
Oh man, I forgot about those two, Waluigi and Wario. That's an interesting idea. I think Bowser Jr. or the Koopalings is probably going to be next because they're going to need to establish some way of Bowser to be loose again and some motivation for him to, get his power back or become the enemy again. It'd also be cool, like if one of these movies, I'm sure there's many planned. If one of these movies Bowser like joins up with them, because sometimes we have like those Mario RPG games where Bowser is like part of the team.
Yeah.
To fight like an even bigger enemy. Like I feel like that would be cool too. Like they gotta put their differences aside and like join together.
Well, we already kind of got that with Donkey Kong joining Mario.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think it'll be really fun to see like that kind of, push and pull. I'm sure it'll be really funny moments of them like fighting and trying to get along while they do this. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully that's in the works too.
Now, what do you think we get first? A Mario 2, or do you think we get a Donkey Kong movie?
Oh, like a dedicated Donkey Kong spinoff. I think a Mario 2 because Donkey Kong's in this movie now. Like they've set up the canon for these movies to include all these different characters. So I feel like it's going to be like almost like a direct sequel to this movie.
I would think so as well, but Seth Rogen's already out there talking about how he would love to like star in a Donkey Kong movie. They had they had cameos from other Kong family, like they had Diddy and Dixie Kong.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Diddy Kong is so cute. I wish we got more of Diddy Kong.
I know. That's why I think that they might be going in that direction because we got Diddy and Dixie Kong for like a total of like 3 seconds on screen.
3 seconds, yeah, totally. Maybe there's a way to just have that be a bigger part of the next movie. I mean, it was a pretty big part of this movie too. Like we spent a lot of time in the Jungle Kingdom. We spent a lot of time with the Kongs. But I can see that, being a bigger through like a plot line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be weird to not expand on that more because there's so much lore and like universe they can explore in that.
Totally agreed. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that they're just going to keep making these movies. Like, how many Minion movies do we have? 4, 5?
I mean, I don't even know what it's like if you're including Despicable Me, and then there's like a prequel to Despicable Me. And
like, I can see that kind of branching off into these different sort of things, like the Mario movie universe can be like a secondary Minion type universe that they do. And yeah, I think that's very likely.
I mean, I guess all three of these companies, Illumination, Nintendo, and Universal, they're sitting on a gold mine with these Nintendo properties. I think that this movie's going to do very well. It's kind of a weird weekend given the holiday, but like that's why it came out on a Wednesday instead of a Friday.
They changed the date like halfway through. Remember that? That was funny.
Yeah. They were like, "Oh yeah, Easter's that Sunday." But I think that the movie's going to do very well. I'd be very surprised if this is not like a big hit for Universal. And I think it's going to kickstart a whole universe.
I think so too. I think they're well positioned. I think this movie's going to, make them a ton of money. And I'm excited. Bring it. Let's see this universe that you're building. Hopefully they stick to being, really high quality, joyful representations of characters and games that we love. And I can't wait to see more.
Absolutely. And it's nice that movies are finally being made by people who were fans of this growing up.
Yeah.
And the directors, I think, said it best in my interview that people heard earlier in the show, where people back in the early days of video game adaptations, they understood that games were popular, but they didn't understand why the games were popular. So it's great that we now have people with that understanding making these things. We see it in The Last of Us. We see it in the Sonic movies.
Yeah.
We see it in this movie, I think, really well. And I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Yeah. It's awesome.
So any other thoughts on this movie before we wrap up here, Krista?
I'm going to see it a third time with some other friends this weekend. So
rivaling me.
Let's see if I catch any other references, but I'm not sick of it yet. So
yeah, that's the thing. Is like I left it the third time thinking like, okay, I can go a few months without seeing this movie again.
Yeah.
But I wasn't like, oh my God, please get me out of this theater.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Everyone should go see it though. It's very good.
People can go to your podcast feed, the Kit and Krysta podcast, and listen to your full review as well.
Yes.
You and Kit had a dedicated episode to it.
Yeah.
And you can also go to GameInformer.com to read my written review of the movie. And Krysta, thank you so much for joining me for this episode.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to be on.
And thank you so much to everyone for listening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, throw All Things Nintendo a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to get any questions or comments in, you can get in touch with me at allthingsnintendo@GameInformer.com or hit me up on Instagram @BrianPShea. And of course, you can always join the Game Informer community Discord, which is a perk for subscribing to our Twitch channel, even just for 1 month. Krysta, get your plugs in. Where can people find you on social media, and how can they support the Kit and Krysta podcast?
Yeah, you can find us at youtube.com/Kit and Krysta. We are also fully Patreon funded, so find us at patreon.com/Kit and Krysta. Support us. We tell lots of insider stories every week from our time at Nintendo. And yeah, it's been great.
That's our show for this week. Thank you again for listening. Take care. We will see you next time.